This is my first time doing this. Sorry, bear with me, please. Okay, it's now streaming live on Facebook. We're all famous. Okay. Yeah, so I guess I'll start us off. Hi, everyone. My name is Eliana. I'm currently junior advisor to gender equity. And it's so strange talking like in a room full of people, but everyone else is muted, so I'm just hearing myself. Yeah, so I'll just provide a little introduction to gender equity initiative in global surgery. So this space is just meant to be a very like informal space where anyone interested in gender equity initiative in global surgery, GEIGS, can just kind of listen in and ask any questions. And we have a couple panelists here from our leadership team that will also talk about their experiences and their roles on the team. And hopefully that'll sort of give you a better insight of how our team functions and the things that we are doing currently. So just to give you a little background, so GEIGS is an organization with the goal of fighting gender disparities in surgery, obstetrics, and anesthesia workforce worldwide through research, advocacy, and mentorship. So we have three main goals. So number one, it's related to research to inform the surgical community and the public on gender disparities in the SAO fields. And number two is to advocate for gender equity in SAO fields on social media, on any other public-facing platforms such as writing op-eds, journalism, etc. And third is by creating a mentorship network to empower surgeons, trainees, and students of any underrepresented gender worldwide. And our rationale for this is for gender equity, for promoting gender equity in surgical fields it's fundamentally a matter of justice to promote equity, especially in terms of gender. But secondly, we think that there is a big gap in terms of how currently the surgical workforce worldwide is structured. It's largely cisgender male dominated. And we think that it'll be better for everyone if we improve gender equity and, promote more women and other gender minorities into the workforce. That'll literally give, more power and strength and, I guess, numbers in the current surgical workforce worldwide, and that'll help address surgical disparities. And I think sort of the rule of thumb that I always think about is the population of, or the group of, sorry, it's really loud in the background. The group of people that are serving, a group of health professionals that are serving a population of patients should always reflect the demographic diversity of that group of patients is, I think, like the rule of thumb that we should all follow. So that's sort of the rationale behind our organization. And just to discuss, like, I guess, how we started. So we are currently a sister organization to the Harvard PGSSC. Many of you might know it if you're part of the global surgery community. Harvard PGSSC is Harvard Medical School's program in global surgery and social change. And that's kind of where we started, but we've kind of outgrown them. And so we're a sister organization to them. And so we were founded about 2 years ago by a group of individuals at the Harvard PGSSC, including myself. And so we began as a small team, mostly me and like a couple others. Many of you might know Jackie Corley. She was also one of the founders with me. And Adelina Mazici, Dominic Vervoort, and Kate Wall. So it began with the small team of us, and we just kind of worked on op-eds together, research projects together, and we also rolled out a first cycle of mentorship program and did a couple other advocacy stuff. But so that was about 2 years ago, and this year we have a beautiful, larger team of 30 plus individuals that are leading the team. So we have much more structure in leadership that are running the organization, and we're getting a lot more done this year. So I'm really excited about that. Let's see. I think that's all I've prepared. Did I miss anything, Lotta?
No, I think that's perfect.
Okay, cool. So I don't want to be talking too much. I feel like I already spent like 10 minutes talking. So I think it would be nice if we go around and introduce the panelists. Would it be okay if we, so to the panelists, would it be okay if you guys go around and introduce yourselves, like your name, your pronouns, and your position/role in the group?
Sounds great. Perhaps I can start. I'm not a panelist, but I will be moderating this together with Eliana. My name is Lotta, and I am a medical student in Sweden, and I'm one of the 3 GEIGS chairs for this year. And my pronouns are she, her. I'll pass it on to you, Anusha.
Hey everybody, my name is Anusha. I go by she, her pronouns, and I'm a 4th-year medical student at Tufts University in Boston, and I'm also the US-Canada liaison, so I have split the PAHO region with my partner Duda as well. And so part of that is that we understand that PAHO is one of the WHO regions, but students across that very massive landmass can have different needs. And so although we will be working together to meet student and trainee needs across the PAHO region, I'll be specifically working with students and trainees in the US and Canada to work with their needs in gender equity, and then also how they can further help the cause with our colleagues around the world.
Thank you. Maybe Shia, you can go next.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Shia. I recently graduated from medical school in Canada, and I'm one of the research leads for GEIGS this year. So my pronouns are she and her. And basically what we want to do in research is really to have a better understanding of what's the situation in terms of gender equity worldwide. And so our projects this year, the new ones as well as the old ones, try to focus on these themes. I'm going to pass it on to Emily.
Hi everyone, my name's Emily. I am a 4th-year medical student at University of California, Irvine in the US. I'm one of the mentorship chairs. I'm part of a really great team that is launching our mentor and mentee pairing. So maybe you've seen it on social media. Our pairing is in the process and we'll shortly be announcing those soon. So we're really excited about the mentorship across the various countries that are joining our group. So thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Zoe, do you want to go next? You're on mute.
Hi, I hope everyone can hear me now. Apologies for that. So my name is Zoe. I actually graduated from medical school a few years back, and I'm working in surgical training in Wales with a particular interest in plastic and reconstructive surgery. My pronouns are she and her, and I am one of the members of the Advocacy Council, led by a very capable team of Pedra, Isabella, and Mohsin. I was really interested in working in advocacy actually for gender equity, because I think we need to really raise the profile of it, and that's what our team is hoping to do, to really support our colleagues in the research and mentorship sort of arms of the organisation, because their work is so important, and it's sort of in conjunction with them raising the profile of the gender disparities in surgery. Thanks.
Perfect, thank you. And Michalina, last but not least.
Thank you so much, Lotta. Hi everyone, my name is Michalina Drejza, and my pronouns are she and her. I am an obstetrics and gynecology resident back in my home country, Poland. And in GEIGS, I am a regional co-liaison for Europe. And as Anusha said, our role is mostly to liaise between the committees and make sure that members from respective regions are more involved in the initiative. So I'm very, very excited about that. If you guys are from European region, don't hesitate to reach out to myself or my colleagues Zineb and Chinsi, because the European region is so big, we needed 2 liaisons. So I'm very excited about the work.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I think we can move on to our first question for today's discussion. And we just want to provide some more insight into what GEIGS is about and the current work that we are doing. So I want to ask you all, what work are you currently involved in GEIGS? I'll open it up for anybody who wants to grab the question first.
I can go first. So as one of the liaisons for like a region in general, I think one of my first things that I think of is like building a community in that area. And so part of that is like setting up a listserv, you know, setting up a WhatsApp group, and really just getting a sense of like who amongst us are really interested in these ideas and connecting them with everyone else. I think once you have a community to be part of, you can really get excited about something. You can learn how to troubleshoot the issues that you're going through, and you can share your experiences. I think especially with gender equity, some of our experiences can be really sensitive and heartbreaking sometimes, and also heartwarming, and there's a lot of emotion involved, and it's like really great, I think, to have a space to share all of that, either to vent or to celebrate, whichever way we go. And so part of it is first like building up this community online, especially I think even without COVID, because we're all over the world and also in the US and Canada, all over the country across different time zones, a virtual platform is always going to be the way that we connect with people who are thousands of kilometers or thousands of miles away. And so that's my like first project I'm working on, is really bringing this around to all the different like medical schools and training programs and professional organizations. And then as that community gets set up, I really envision like setting up journal clubs and webinars to get conversation moving. I think part of that is to highlight the work that's being done, either by researchers already or also our research team right now, and you know, having critical conversations around gender equity issues, especially in the US and Canada, because that's my expertise, but then also co-liaising with, you know, the other regional reps, and making sure that people are aware of how these issues manifest in all parts of the world, because obviously they intersect with things like race and class and so many other things. And so it's like starting off that conversation so people can learn, and then hopefully that also then ends up generating ideas for research to then, you know, connect back with the research team, better ways to mentor, to connect back with the mentorship team, and also how to make sure that we're a diverse cohort, you know, connecting with our diversity and inclusion initiatives as well. So that's kind of like the 10,000 foot view of where I'm thinking this next few months will be going.
I love that. And I'd love to add how the advocacy team has been such a huge launch point for the mentorship team. We would not be possible without such incredible aspects of all the GEIGS teams. So thank you to everyone who is on board, and thanks to everyone who's showing up. So the mentorship team is really excited to partner people who just have questions and people who are willing to answer those questions. And mentorship is that two-way street. And so we're really excited to pair mentors with these mentees in a pod format. So mentees can share these questions amongst each other, they can ask questions to the mentor, and also the mentor is going to learn a lot. So depending on where you're at in your training, you can benefit from being a mentor or a mentee. So if you've seen it on social media, November 10th is when we're going to be closing that mentee app. So for those of you watching, hopefully you've applied. And then the mentor app is closing November 25th. So after that, we really are excited to see these pods forming to allow this conversation to happen. And Anusha put it perfectly. This is the era to be on Zoom. So why not have these pods happening on Zoom, and people can interact whenever it's most easy for them. So everyone's ready to do that with this experience that we've had in 2020. So it's a great launch point. And so hopefully you've all applied, and we're just really excited to facilitate those conversations.
If I can go next, I know that Anusha and Emily already mentioned a lot what I wanted to say, but what I wanted to say is that this year is very special for the initiative because we are starting to really grow also as organizations. So a lot of structures that have not been there are now. So we have the regional structures building up. So my role as regional liaison, as Anusha already started saying, is really to just get people together and enable networking for people who are already working in the region, or as for Europeans, there are a lot of people who are potentially also planning careers within European regions but are not there yet. So it is mostly the work that we're doing is really networking and capacity building. We're also planning in the upcoming month, so stay tuned, the webinar, the European webinar with some prominent scholars from European region. So definitely something to stay tuned to. Also, as was said already, we're seeking some research opportunities focused on the regions, but it's already it's something that is in the making. So hopefully we're going to have more soon. But so far, really focusing on networking, capacity building, and it's super exciting to see this organization growing. It's really exciting times ahead.
Thank you, Michalina, for sharing that, and thank you, Anusha and Emily, as well. And I just wanted to kind of jump in and say that these regional webinars are also going to be happening in other regions. So our colleagues in Africa, Amy and Jocelyn, are currently planning a webinar series that hopefully will be launching in the coming month or so to highlight amazing women in surgery in Africa. And we're planning similar events across different regions. So that's something that's quite exciting. And Zoe, do you have anything you want to share on behalf of Advocacy?
Yeah, I would love to. I think what I love about hearing from my sort of, co-panelists is actually the word community, and it's about the word connection. And I think gender sometimes can be a very, as you said, as Anusha said, it is often a heartbreaking topic for many people and a very difficult to navigate one. And I think a lot of people feel uncertain as to how to discuss these issues and how to talk about them. And how does one become an advocate for something that means something very different to different people when it comes to gender across many other diversity issues? And I think when you think about the interaction between gender and things like race and ethnicity, that intersectionality becomes even more sort of tricky waters to navigate. And I think from sort of our team and advocacy, I think it's about just continuing to build those conversations between our members. For anyone who can engage with us on our social media platforms, really is a way we're communicating with each other by building that profile, building those discussions, providing that space for people to talk to each other, to mull it out between ourselves. What's the way forward? Where do we want to go from here? What are the issues that matter to us as a community? And by building up the mentorship program, by supporting our colleagues in that, that's really about building connection between people who can support each other, particularly in an era where we need social distancing. And it's building on these virtual relationships, and then research as well. We need the research to help us, to show us kind of like which direction we want to be moving forward. Where are the areas that we are really finding difficulties in? Where are the disparities the greatest? Where might be the best evidence-based way forward in terms of addressing these disparities? And so I think advocacy is about bringing all of that together and just getting the message out there all the time, and actually helping the community figure out what they want to do by just facilitating those conversations. I think that's what a lot of work we'd like to, in a way, we see kind of supporting the other arms of the organization in doing.
Thank you, Zoe, for sharing that. Shia, do you have anything you want to share on behalf of upcoming research projects or anything from the Research Council?
Yeah, sure. So this year we have inherited a couple of research projects that were already ongoing from the previous team, and we definitely want to bring them to, to finish, if we can put it like that. But at the same time, I think what's really fun is that having 3 fellow colleagues, we have a lot of new ideas and new perspectives as to where we want to take our research projects. So just to give you a couple of ideas of what is coming up, we actually have a couple of projects that are probably going to take off pretty soon. We're just trying to figure out some of the final details, but on themes like sexual misconduct in academic medicine, perceptions about breastfeeding during residency training, also cultural barriers in different regions of the world, and also the experience of LGBTQ plus trainees within surgery. So these are some of the exciting projects that we really want to at least kickstart for this year. And we will likely need some volunteers and help, and we'll be very happy to reach out to not only the members of GEIGS, but also pretty much anyone who's interested. One thing that we really care about this year is representation and giving opportunities to people. So that's something that we'll definitely take into account very seriously.
Thank you. I love hearing that. Did you want to say anything, Eliana?
Yeah, I love how Lotta just knows when I'm about to talk. It's probably because I unmute myself, right? Yeah, I just wanted to add to the last point that Shia made about engagement. So that's definitely one of our biggest goals this year, is to be, engaging everyone, I guess, across the globe, a lot of people across the globe. And that's also because I forgot to mention this in the introduction, but so we have 3 main visions this year. And it's, I guess, about inclusivity. And so first one is that we want to be gender inclusive. So that means, so previously we were a very like women's group, like women focused organization. And we just want to be as gender inclusive as possible moving forward, because we acknowledge that there are gender minorities outside of the gender binary. So like, other genders from, other than like cisgender men and cisgender women. And so we want to be inclusive of all individuals, regardless of their gender identity. And then the second vision is that we want to address intersectionality in gender equity. Because gender equity isn't its own, it's not a topic of its own. It depends on other, types of equity, other types of inequity, and injustices. So we're planning on tackling topics that are not just purely gender equity, but also tying that into how like racial injustices affect gender equity, and things like that. And last point is, last vision that we have is, so we are based out of, so like we started being based out of the Harvard PGSSC. And so like the founders, for example, were all from, I don't know, like the US. I'm from South Korea, but I'm based in the US currently. And a lot of, the people that we've worked with in the past are like Europeans, North Americans, US, Canada, but we want to make sure that our leadership, as well as people that we engage with as an organization, is not just from the global north, but just from the rest of the world. So we want to be as diverse and inclusive as possible.
Thank you, Eliana, for sharing that as well. That's great. And I really loved some of the points that were brought up here with emphasizing that gender equity and gender issues can be something very close to one's heart, and something that many of us have personal experiences with, and something that can be quite difficult to go through. But at the same time, I think everybody who are on this call are also interested in advocating for gender equity and being agents of change. At the same time, many of us are trainees or medical students, and being in that position is often not really a position of power, but rather a difficult position to advocate in, and to actually raise our voices when we feel like something is not right. So I want to ask all of you on the panel, how do you think we can leverage our role as trainees or students to be advocates for gender equity within surgery and global health at large?
I can start with one thing. I think as students and trainees, we can begin by supporting each other, and I think creating healthy circles of support and I think you, as Eliana alluded to before, it used to be kind of like, women supporting women, but I think I want to come up with a more inclusive phrase than that. But then also on the other hand of it, like encouraging like our male identifying classmates to, also lean into all of these other things that they could be interested in, and family life and things like that. And so it's like, I do think it's going to take a little bit of time. I think generational issues are very much there, but I think we can start by creating, a healthy community amongst ourselves and keeping that as we go through our training, no matter how tough it gets. And like telling ourselves telling our colleagues, there isn't only a spot for one woman or one gender non-conforming person at like the table. There's like more than that space. I think of the RBG quote where she was like, when will you think that like equality in the Supreme Court has been reached, like gender equity? And she was like, when there are 9 justices. And so there's absolutely room for us to have that right now.
Yeah, I think I want to add to that in that I think the first thing is not feeling like you're alone. And I think this is where, where people celebrate the power of social media. It is a platform for connecting to those who aren't in your immediate circle. You might not be having these conversations with the people around you. Your department might not be interested. Your friendship circle might not be interested. But if it's something that you have noticed, or you're seeing it as a problem in your, in your life, or it's something that you care about, and I think reaching out to the other members in the group and reaching out to the community that we're trying to build together is sort of the first step to sort of like actually what do you think about it, and what are other people saying about it, and just and feeling that sense of community. And then I think, and I think that's the first step. Once you are feeling like you're in a community and you're supported, you can then start by doing other things, as a trainee, as a medical student, whether it's just, not just, but whether it's organizing an event where you invite a speaker who is, a gender minority, or a female surgeon, and just to share their experiences and opening up to the wider community and letting them engage, have that engagement where people can learn more about it and make up their own mind. I think is, I think is a very good start to sort of how to leverage our position as trainees to sort of building that kind of gender equity movement.
Yeah, I think building up on that, I think the most important thing is to raise awareness. And I think that this is the first step that we can do, but it's also the most difficult, especially if your environment is not acknowledging that certain things are happening. And that is why it's very difficult to start the conversation. But if you do, it seems that you're not alone, and this feeling of not feeling alone and shining some light onto the issues is something that I, at least in my department recently, really acknowledged. I work in a obstetrics and gynecology, in which majority of trainees are women, but our leaders are men. So it's very difficult kind of a conflict of generations that we're experiencing. And the thing is that it started with a basic speaking up and saying that some things are not okay. And then we really started feeling this feeling of, oh my goodness, you think this way, you felt this way, you had the same experience like I do. So raising awareness, and also stating the obvious, because sometimes, we are not speaking the same definitions and people might understand certain things very differently. So I'm a huge fan of speaking up and making sure that people feel safe. That's what I try to do. And you can do it everywhere. You can do it back with your community, at your university, with your department. But also, as Zoe said, if not feeling alone, you can reach out to the community that we do have in GEIGS as well. And it is a nice place to also share and feel that feeling of community.
I think it's amazing how much we highlight community and sharing these common spaces, because having those people to share those experiences with, especially in a leadership differential with different genders across the board, but some being more male dominated, it's just very interesting to have these shared conversations. And I think a really great way we can promote and advocate for gender diversity is just by having those really intimate one-on-one conversations with our patients as well, and making sure that they feel comfortable with their care and making sure that their gender identity is being well supported. I know in the US, and specifically where I'm at in medical school, we have a whole curriculum on gender diversity so that we make sure our patients are feeling comfortable. And I think that really helps with providers feeling comfortable sharing that conversation as well. And really having that emphasis on there is a gender diversity. Let's be aware, let's talk about it, and here's how we can actively move forward with it. So we're having this conversation now. I think we're all really being those advocates, and it's exciting to see.
Thank you. I love that. Does anybody else want to add anything, or should we go on to the Q&A? All right. Well, I totally agree with the things that have been said, and that's why I'm really thankful that GEIGS exists and that I can be a part of it. That just getting a community, even though we're all in very different geographical places, I feel like there is support if I need it. And mobile surgery is not something that's very big in Sweden, I would say. And so finding people close to me physically who are in the same position as I am may be difficult, but having this community is so helpful, and I really appreciate it. So we want to open it up so that you all can ask questions or share your thoughts. And if you can just write your name in the chat or mention that you want to speak, then we'll direct it that way. So if anybody has any questions, please just write in the chat. And while we wait for questions to come in, I'll just ask one more question, which is, with the pandemic reaching around the world, how can we best get engaged with GEIGS virtually?
So I think coming to the webinar is the first step. That's, I think, if there's one thing that's good that comes out of this pandemic is how used to Zooms or virtual platforms that people are. And it's great because it really removes a lot of barriers that we used to have, physical barriers or perhaps sometimes even language barriers that prevent people from connecting with others. So, I'd like to think that we're a very open group of people. If you want to message any of us, whether privately or more officially through the emails, we'll be more than happy to answer your questions, or at least to guide you to someone who can answer it if we can't do it ourselves. And, we're also a growing community, as in we're also learning a bit, how we fit into this whole story. So, we definitely welcome your suggestions or comments. So really just reach out and we'll be happy to communicate with you.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. We're trying to build our social media base because it's a way of connecting ourselves with each other. On Twitter recently, we've launched the sort of GEIGS Hour to try and support the mentorship program. And that's been really interesting in generating a lot of discussion about what makes great mentoring, what makes that great sort of virtual, mentor-mentee relationship. And we've been doing these journal sort of article of the month, which is sort of like a deep dive into an article which focuses on the kind of current research or state of play in the sort of gender equity issues in surgery. And I think they're really good ways of kind of getting involved, because they start you thinking a bit more about actually what are we saying, what is out there, what's the evidence, and what's our kind of analysis of it. And getting involved in that, you'll actually find that you connect with lots of really, really fantastic people who are already doing a lot of great work on this. So I really recommend that as being a quick kind of and sort of like easier way to connect, particularly when everyone's very busy in their day-to-day lives.
And to add to that, I think during COVID, like webinars have become very popular. I mean, we're hosting one right now, more so than they ever were beforehand. And so, you know, signing up for those, attending those, a lot of the times they're recorded if, you know, you either have to be in clinic or it's at a weird time for you, depending on like where you are in the world. I think that exposes you once again to more people who are in the community and talking about these things across a variety of topics. You know, it doesn't just have to be in global health or in surgery. I think it's all over in healthcare that more and more, especially how COVID is impacting like women specifically. And, you know, that's where we think about, okay, like how do we push this conversation further to be more gender inclusive? But there's a lot out there in terms of webinars and education materials now because of COVID. So definitely would also pursue those.
Yeah, thank you. That's definitely one of the few benefits of what we've been seeing in the past few months. And we'll be rounding off a bit later and sharing more on how to get involved with GEIGS. But first, I just want to kind of zoom out once more and ask a question about the importance of gender equity. And so I think one challenge that we do face in the global surgery movement is that it's already a very big topic. We have everything from research projects like implementation science or understanding the current burden of surgical disease and how to better scale up surgical care to meet the need that's there. To things like policy work and national surgical plans and so on. And so it is already encompassing so much. And I think many of the people that are leading the global surgery movement may struggle to see that gender equity should be yet another issue that should be a part of this, and that we're somehow already oversaturated with things to include in the global surgery movements. And so gender equity is something that may often fall in the periphery and not seen as relevant or prioritized. So I want to ask all of you, how can we make gender equity a more central part of global surgery?
I very much think of that article actually that Eliana and Jackie wrote about how there's a global surgery problem and like we're like missing out on half of the workforce. Like, I don't get me wrong, I'm very much like of the morals that like this should just be like reason enough to include all genders in any effort. But if we are ever looking for like an economic argument or a policy argument, it's the fact that we are going to miss out on half of the workforce if we don't think about people who don't identify as men. And that's like such a key issue if we want to scale up healthcare, you know, across this SAO fields.
I actually completely agree, and it's exactly what I had in mind. Actually, we did on Twitter. We featured Eliana and Jackie's article as article of the month, and it is precisely that. There's a huge burden of disease that's amenable to surgical care, and I think the workforce is one of the most important things in the healthcare system. We look at what the pandemic has revealed, and you potentially could produce, personal protective equipment. You might be able to even manufacture more ventilators, but you cannot manufacture at sort of fast speed the staff that's required to look after patients. And so the workforce is crucial to any functioning healthcare system. And when you think about the amount of kind of systemic and structural barriers in place to recruiting that workforce, and when you have a non-diverse workforce as well, I don't think you can begin to sort of properly serve your community and your patients when the whole workforce is sort of very polarized to one proportion of society. So I completely think, I think sort of thinking about it in terms of workforce is a very, very, I think, a valuable way of thinking about it.
I totally agree with that. And I just put a link to the article that Anusha mentioned. And it's a really quick read. So I welcome everyone to read it. And another thing I think is also, I mean, both Anusha and Zoe mentioned sort of centering this discussion in the global surgery community and engaging as much people as possible that might not necessarily just have like the gender equity agenda in their mind. I know that all of us do, and that I think that also has to do with our experiences our personal experiences and just the things that we are passionate about. And I think that has to do with like the kind of people we are in our personal experiences, right? And I, as much as I totally, yeah, I like, as much as I, you know, I find it very frustrating that no one else, that people have, that no one else, that not everyone in the world has like gender equity as number one thing on their agenda. I also understand why that might not be, you know, people are different and people have different priorities, I guess. So I definitely think that one important thing that we should all try to do is try to, I don't know, promote more like he for she movements, for example, where I feel like gender equity discussion can largely kind of be dismissed as like a woman's, you know, topic of discussion and like a women's movement. And it's amazing to have a women's movement and as such, but I think it's really important for to ensure that like everyone else is involved in the discussion. Yeah, and I think he for she movement has been really effective in doing that. And so that's why we also have like, we have a team called Diversity, Equity, and Justice Task Force. And one of the people representative of the task force is a he for she rep who's supposed to, you know, promote various initiatives that try to expand the discussion beyond the scope of, you know, women and minoritized genders, but just to everyone, and just ensuring that, or just, you know, putting gender equity on everyone else's agenda. I think that it's a big ambitious task, but I think it's a necessary one.
Thank you, Eliana. I want to give the questions that we received in the chat a go. Thank you all for sending questions, and please feel free to keep sending questions. If we don't manage to answer all questions now, we can make sure that you get an answer by email or so after this session. And the first question that we have is from Rafaela from Brazil. And I think this question goes mainly for you, Emily. I wonder if you could explain more about how the mentorship program will work and if there are any requirements for mentees, for example.
Yeah, great question. Definitely no requirements. I think just having an eager spirit to be able to join and listen to our mentors and to our fellow mentees will be the only requirement. So mentorship, the process is the application, which is going on right now. We're currently doing it in Portuguese, Spanish, and English. And so we're recruiting more mentors right now so that we can fulfill a really great pod. So these mentorship pods are going to be composed of one mentor and a few mentees, depending on how many mentors and mentees we have. So stay tuned for that specific ratio. And we will be doing that pairing on the mentorship side in December and announcing those towards the end of December, early January, so that 2021 can be filled with your incredible conversations with your mentors. And that's going to be very informal. It's just going to be a Zoom, a WhatsApp, FaceTime, whatever you all decide to be that best form of communication. We're going to really try to address your interest in those specific mentors that you may have, or languages, or if you're OBGYN, hopefully we get to pair you with an OBGYN, or if you want to be a plastic surgeon, hopefully you get to meet a plastic surgeon. But really the core of it is just having these conversations about gender and equity in the global surgery space and creating this really awesome international collaboration. I love these panels and these opportunities to work with women and men and gender equity, gender diverse people across the world, because you learn so much. So there's so much to be learned just by participating. So we're really excited to have you all join.
Thank you, Emily. Rafaela, I hope that answered your question. And the next question I think is really interesting. It's from Rodrigo. And the question reads that it's about generation differences and distances. So would it be possible, or what do you think, to have more traditional ways to discuss gender inequities, such as MMO in our hospitals and monthly schools meetings? Because sometimes I believe the issue is also about the way we communicate. Dinosaurs, such as I am, are more into avoiding social media, or at least the ones in social media are already progressive enough to listen. I think this is a really great question. I think this goes for gender equity, probably also goes for global surgery, and I think many things that we engage in, that we tend to come into these kind of echo chambers, and we maybe don't reach the people that we really need to reach. So thank you so much for this question. Do any of you want to share your thoughts on this?
I personally think this is where our like only departmental or class, depending on like where you are in your training, like either a grand rounds talk or a journal club that's, you know, like scheduled on like a monthly basis comes in really handy, because these are usually meetings that are already set up that like everyone in the department or everyone in the class or wherever you're at attends. And so they're used to like coming into this and I think thinking like, okay, I'm going to either learn about something or we're going to talk about something. And so having one or more around gender diversity, gender inclusion, I think is like kind of a more classic environment to talk about any issue in. And I think it starts that conversation off that this is just as important to learn about as is, you know, the latest treatment for whatever it is that you're learning about, or like a new intervention or clinical trial, that this is just as important of a topic. So I think those are great forums, you know, especially if if you like rotate like residents or rotate medical students or rotate faculty and who hosts them. I think creating that as a platform is awesome.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. And I think this was a bit aligning to what you said before, Michelina, with there being this generation difference in your apartment, and probably social media is not the way to approach some of the departmental leaders that are maybe on a different side in this conversation. And so I think using existing platforms within our departments and institutions, like you're saying, is really a great way. And also, as you were saying before, Michelina, to be brave and kind of speak up in our immediate work environment, I think also really sets an example for the people that we work with, and opens up for these type of conversations in the workplace as well. And we have received another question from Sanika. What kind of research topics will be included, and what will we be working on after we join, and what are the requirements to join research projects? Shia, could you answer this question?
Yeah, sure. So the research topics are very varied. I gave a couple of examples earlier about, perception of breastfeeding in surgical training, or sexual misconduct in academic surgery. So these are just a few examples of where these projects can go, but really we are interested in any topic really that kind of overlaps surgery, a component of global. So whether it is like, in multiple countries or in some areas around the world, and also gender equity at large. So I'd say that we have a pretty diverse set of topics. We do have a limited number of people who could join each of these projects. It's not necessarily because we just want to keep it to ourselves, but rather because we want to actually bring these projects to a finish, and we need people who can generally give their time and give some efforts. So in terms of requirements, I would mostly say, motivation, time, and willingness to learn. Obviously, if you do have some research experience, that's a plus. But personally, and I think my co-leads also agree, that it's not a must. It's a good to have. But, we rather have somebody who's very motivated and will actually put in the time to do the work than somebody who is knowledgeable but just can't dedicate themselves to it. So that's kind of where we're going for. We have not launched any call yet for volunteers to help us. So just watch out for that. If you'd like to sign up for the GEIGS newsletter, or just stay tuned on social media, we'll be announcing that when the time will be.
Perfect, thank you, Shia. So we have just a few more minutes. So I think if there's any final question, please write in the chat and we'll try to address it. And in the meantime, I'm going to send a link here on the chat, which is a feedback form. So we'd be super appreciative if you can take a minute to just fill out this form, since this is actually the first webinar that we're hosting this year with GEIGS. And so we just want to hear your impressions and see how we can improve for the coming webinars. And as mentioned before, we currently haven't open calls to join research projects, etc., but those things will be coming up. So if you haven't already, please register as a member, and we can send the link in the chat as well. And when you register as a member, you can get added to our newsletter or listserv. And so in these emails and newsletters, we'll announce any upcoming opportunities to join, for example, research projects or any exciting webinars that are happening. As mentioned as well, the mentor and mentee apps are still open, and so they're closing soon. So please consider applying. And I think another recommendation or suggestion we can make is, if you have any people that you know of or any previous mentors that you think would be a good fit for our mentor program, then please also send them this link and ask if they could consider joining as a mentor, because we're definitely looking for more mentors so we can pair as many mentees as possible with a mentor. And then, as Anusha just wrote, we do have a general member Facebook group. We previously had a WhatsApp group, but it got full, and so we're moving to Facebook. So please also try to join that. The link is in our newsletter, or when you sign up for the newsletter, you will get an email with these handles. I think that's it from us. Are there any final closing words from any of our panelists or any of our guests?
Yeah, I just want to pipe up from an advocacy perspective. For all of you, don't be afraid to just join in the conversation on whatever platform we use. Already the questions have been really great today, and particularly I think, sort of thinking beyond GEIGS, Rodrigo's question about actually how do we bring about, sort of talking about gender equity in the local department. These are all, I think, questions that everyone can be answering and everyone can be thinking about together, because I think there is no straightforward answer. But I think that's where the strength of our community can come in. If we can share what works and what doesn't work and share those experiences, I think would be a really, really great thing.
Thank you, Zoe. I agree. And I also want to highlight what Shia said before, that we want to be a very informal organization, and we're still growing and learning. So if you have anything you think we should be thinking more about, or you have any questions, just feel free to reach out to any of us at any point. I think you have access to our emails, or you can find it on our website, or you can reach out to us on Twitter, etc. It says, I think the link you sent was the one to sign up. Did I make a mistake?
Oh yeah, that's the link.
I did make a mistake. Thank you so much for noticing that. Let me resend the link. Let's see. My multitasking is not working out clearly. So the new link is just
I just wanted to have like a last little plug for this event that I'll be speaking at. So on Thursday, if anyone is interested in neurosurgery, me and a couple other individuals are giving a little talk on diversity in neurosurgery, and I'll be talking a lot about gender equity in neurosurgery. So the talk is on Thursday. It's 9 a.m. EST, but there's like a little brochure that I've been circulating around. So you'll find that on our Facebook page. And it's actually part of morning report at the Harvard Program in Global Surgery and Social Change. So I hope everyone can join. Yeah, the sign up link is on Facebook. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Eliana. Well, thank you everybody who attended. We're so happy that so many of you joined. And bye-bye, everybody. Hope to see you around in upcoming GEIGS events.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.